And so we're coming now to the roundtable. I've already briefly described it, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand out, well, and I'll stop speaking as well, because I'd like to hand over firstly to Boris, one of our lead regional focal points, who's going to briefly describe the goal for this roundtable, and then he'll hand over to the chairs. So Boris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, so let me introduce briefly the scope of the roundtable. So broadly, this roundtable is meant to exchange ideas and discuss new activities and opportunities being developed by communities of scientists, programs, or institutions in order to foster the connection between research and ocean solutions. The purpose is first to provide to the audience an overview of the ongoing research programs we have in relation with the ocean, and first and foremost, those in the frame of the Decade of the Ocean Science of the United Nations. This is also aimed at informing on further opportunities for collaboration. It is also about elaborating on the knowledge systems we might need to meet the scale and urgency of ocean's challenges. In other words, what is needed to develop ocean solutions. This roundtable is also about discussing how WCRP can help reducing differences between the global north and the global south in terms of training in ocean science, observational capabilities, operational oceanography, computing capabilities, and any other topics that may emerge from the discussion and questions today. So Ken and Regina, the floor is yours. You may now introduce the keynote speakers.
Okay, I'm going to start with our first speaker, is Salvatore Rico, and he's head of the Ocean Science section at the Intergovernmental Oceanography Commission of UNESCO, where he contributes to shaping the ocean science agenda in the next decade and directs the Global Ocean Science Report. Previously, he was Executive Secretary of the United Nations Secretary General's Scientific Advisory Board, coordinator of UNESCO Intersectorial Biodiversity Program, senior researcher at the United Nations University Institute of Advanced Studies, chief of the Marine and Coastal Biodiversity Program of the Convention on Biological Diversity, and researcher at the University of Delaware. Salvatore obtained his PhD at Stazione Zoologica in Naples in 1992. He has authored more than 90 publications on biodiversity, the ocean, global change, and science technology. During the past 25 years, he has held academic affiliations in Americas, Asia, and Europe. Among Salvatore's achievements are building scholarly evidence demonstrating the need for biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction agreements, making a successful case for the inclusion of a dedicated ocean chapter in assessment reports of the IPCC, and contributing to the creation of the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service. Without further ado, the floor is all yours, Salvatore, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Regina, for the wonderful, very warm introduction, and Boris. And I also want to recognize, you know, the chair and vice chair of WCRP for the opportunity. It's a great opportunity to be able to look at the ocean perspective of climate research, possibly from the angle of South America in particular. And I happen to have a couple of slides, and I would love to go through them, if I may, rather quickly, with the assistance of the WCRP colleagues. If you could kindly...
Do you want us to share them, Salvatore?
Yes,
would you like us to? Yeah, okay.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Narelle and Helen. Yes. So basically, so let's move to the next one. I thank you. I wanted to, yesterday I heard a lot of references to the capacity development dimension of the problem. So I thought, let's share a couple of findings from the Global Ocean Science Report 2020, which is based on primary data from some, it says 45, but it's almost 50 countries, but then we work with global data sets in terms of trends in scientific production, bibliometric studies, technometric studies also, that is to say, trends in blue patterns, and also gender-specific analysis with regard to, in relation to ocean science. Next, please. And this Global Ocean Science Report has demonstrated that basically the number of ocean scientists per country varies, significantly, but also that compared to the 2017 edition of the report, there are a number of countries, kind of new players, that are investing in ocean science, in terms of the human workforce behind ocean science. Next, please. And when you look at the budgetary envelope that is devoted to ocean science, which is considered, which is measured as a proportion of the global envelope for research and development, again, the situation varies a lot. And on average, you have a rather ridiculous percentage of the budget that is devoted to ocean science. It's 1.7%, with countries investing, from pretty much nothing all the way to almost 12% of the research and development envelope. Next, please. Now, if you, the presentation will be available, and you will be able to see some figures for figures related to some Latin American countries, but South American countries, but here in particular with regard to the research profiles, the profiles of ocean scientists globally, but also in the region, one can see, based on the Global Ocean Science Report, that if not the expertise, but at least the investments in ocean sciences tend to go towards other areas than
Salvatore,
ocean.
1 minute.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Then ocean and climate. So ocean and climate is slightly penalized as a research area. Next, please. So, and also when it comes to ocean data, there is a lot to do in terms of respecting the principles of findability, accessibility, interoperability, and replicability of ocean data in the region. Next, please. Let's move to the next one, which is the penultimate slide. From an ocean carbon research perspective, there is this integrated ocean carbon research platform that federates the efforts of IOC, but also SOLAS, INBER, the Global Carbon Project, WCRP, CLIVA, and IOCCP, and there are important questions before us in terms of whether or not the ocean uptake of anthropogenic CO2 will continue, how biology is responding to climate variability and change, and so on. So next one, which is my last slide, and thank you for your indulgence. So in that context, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development provides a platform for multi-stakeholder action, reflection, and dialogues and action. And there is an important area which is considered as a challenge related to ocean and climate. And therefore, the invitation I wanted to share here is precisely to use the UN Decade as a platform whereby issues related to capacity building in ocean science, the need to address those important research questions can be, and the funding that is needed to build the necessary capacity, human capacity, can be discussed in a multi-stakeholder context using Dedicate precisely as a platform to that end. Next one, thank you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Salvatore. Bueno, quisiera antes de seguir reconocer el importante esfuerzo realizado el WCRP para la inclusión en este foro de Sudamérica, de poder contar con interpretación simultánea entre español e inglés. Así que voy a hacer la introducción de nuestro siguiente orador en español. Nos acompaña Emmanuelle Di Lorenzo, que es profesor y director fundador del programa de Ciencias e Ingeniería Oceánica en el Instituto de Tecnología de Georgia, y presidente y cofundador de Ocean Visions. Obtuvo su PhD en 2003 en la institución de Oceanografía Scripps y realizó trabajo postdoctoral en la Universidad de California en Los Ángeles de 2003 a 2004. Emmanuel es reconocido como un experto mundial en la dinámica y el clima del Océano Pacífico a gran escala y a escala regional. A lo largo de su carrera se ha desempeñado en varios puestos de liderazgo para organizaciones internacionales como CLIBAR, US CLIBAR, PICES e ICES, donde dirigió esfuerzos transdisciplinarios para comprender los impactos del clima en los sistemas marinos y socioecológicos. En 2019, a través de un acuerdo multiinstitucional entre Georgia Tech, Stanford, MIT, Scripps, Woods Hole, Smithsonian, M-Bari, UGA, Monterrey Bay Aquarium, Georgia Aquarium, Emmanuel estableció Ocean Visions, un esfuerzo para transformar y acelerar la transferencia de ciencia y tecnología hacia soluciones para los grandes desafíos oceánicos. Más recientemente, Emmanuel ha liderado el establecimiento del programa Ecosistema Global para Soluciones Oceánicas en el marco del diseño de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo Sostenible de los Océanos. Bueno, es un gusto tener a Emmanuel. Emmanuel, la palabra es tuya.
Hello, my name is Emmanuelle Di Lorenzo. I'm a professor and director of the program in Ocean Science and Engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology in the United States, and I serve as founding chairman of Ocean Visions, an initiative and nonprofit that aims at catalyzing solutions for ocean health and climate. The Ocean Vision was born out of the recognition that there's a disconnect between research and ocean solutions that require breaking down the silos that exist among research institutions, professional ocean-focused societies, NGO, new businesses, and financial institutions. In 2019, a group of leading research and academic institutions joined together to establish Ocean Visions as a network to co-create and deploy equitable, durable, and scalable ocean solutions to the growing crisis in the climate and ocean. The Ocean Vision Research Consortium currently includes institutions with a strong engineering background such as Georgia Tech, Stanford, MIT, and MBARI, and leading oceanographic institutions such as Scripps, Hui, Skidaway, UC Santa Barbara, as well as public-facing institutions such as the Georgia Aquarium, the Smithsonian, and others. We also have established an acceleration and impact partnership. Our mission is to mobilize a diverse community of problem solvers working together to tackle the most pressing challenges facing the ocean. To do so, Ocean Vision has teamed up with international partners to develop a global ecosystem for ocean solutions, also referred to as GEOS, as an endorsed program of the United Nations Decade for Ocean Sustainable Development. The goal of GEOS, again, is to break down these silos across sectors and link research, development, and deployment processes within a unified framework. To this end, the GEOS is organized around three main interacting elements that accomplish specific function. The networking and community building, the goal of which is to convene a multi-sector and multidisciplinary, inclusive, and transparent ocean solution community that can co-design and deploy equitable, durable, and scalable ocean-based solutions for climate change and other ocean-ground challenges. We hope, in fact, to announce soon a new UN Decade Community of Practice entitled Ocean Solutions and Innovations. The second component is the establishment of task forces, the goal of which is to use this multi-sector network to co-design system-level roadmaps that clearly articulate the solution path for key ocean and climate threats. Just recently, Ocean Visions presented a series of ocean solution roadmaps to accomplish ocean carbon sequestration at scale. Now, these roadmaps will be used to catalyze global and synergistic action around central ocean solutions team. These include things like harnessing the ocean power to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, as just mentioned, designing marine circular economies for sustainable development, developing equitable solution technologies and strategy for climate adaptation of coastal systems and communities, building a climate resilience aquatic food system, and ultimately promoting healthy ocean and healthy people. The third component is the innovation engine, the goal of which is to act on these solution roadmaps and help prototype, accelerate, fund, and deploy solutions at scale. The GEOS engine function relies on involving startup, private businesses, industry, and investors with a focus on ocean grand challenges. Now, the GEOS program provides a unique opportunity and platform under the United Nations umbrella to advance more systemically solutions to some of these great challenges that we face today. As we build a global ocean program, GEOS is currently looking for a coalition of lead partners from South America to help shape its vision and also its action. Just a few months ago, the Ocean Vision GEOS Summit brought together over 2,500 participants from 75 countries that reflect a truly multi-sector community as shown in this pie graph, including 650 early career ocean professionals. Following our mission of inclusivity and equitable access, the summit was intentionally organized across 5 virtual campuses located in 4 continents in Europe, Africa, Oceania, and the Americas. This ecosystem approach for solution is necessary to address the big and urgent challenges facing the ocean and climate today, which really require all hands on deck, similar to what we're trying to do for addressing the COVID crisis. Before concluding, I would like to also acknowledge the co-chairs of the GEOS Steering Committee, Fiorenza Micheli, Professor and Co-Director of the Stanford Center for Ocean Solution, and Anna Zivian, Senior Research Fellow at the Ocean Conservancy. I'm happy in the Q&A to discuss opportunities for our colleagues and friends from South America to engage in the GEOS. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And so I'm going to now introduce our third and last speaker, which is Yvonne Catherine Montes. Yvonne works involves the application of a regional ocean model system and a Lagrangian approaches to fill gaps in in-situ observation of current system in the southeastern tropical Pacific. Her focus is currently on the impact of a remote and local sea interaction in upwelling system and climate change. As a postdoc in France, Germany, and Peru under the Euro-Oceans Consortium Ocean Deoxygenation Flagship Program, she pioneered studies on coupled physical biogeochemical regional modeling applying to the Pacific Eastern Boundary Current System to investigate the processes maintaining the oxygen minimum zone of Peru. Since 2014, Yvonne is a research scientist at the Instituto Geophysical del Peru, where she implemented a high-performance computing system that is now available to all scientific community in Peru. She also serves as a member of the IOC UNESCO initiative, Global Ocean Oxygen Network, which investigated the low oxygen concentration in both open ocean and coastal waters. She's also co-chair of the SCORE working group 155 with Eastern Boundary Upwelling System, Diversity, Coupled Dynamics, and Sensitivity to Climate Change. Without further ado, the floor is all yours, Yvonne, and I will also thank you for being today with us.
Thank you to the organization committee. Well, I didn't prepare slides, but I want to only mention some important points from a research point of view, or from a researcher that is working in South America, actually. So, well, but especially in Peru, we know that there are some phenomena that are important. For example, Dr. Poveda more or less give a scheme of what is happening in the region with different processes. So for us, especially in Peru, the El Niño phenomena is very important. So whatever the warming is along the equator or along the coast, there will be effects on our country due to there will be changes on the water cycle extremes, can change the precipitation patterns and promoting flows, drops, or both. So then it's important to study the warming, as I mentioned. And for us, in the case of Peru, Peru is implementing a national commission called ENFEN, which is integrated by 7 national public institutions. So the goal or the objective of this commission is mainly to study and analyze the El Niño event by monitoring key indicators according to the competition of each institution to achieve a better understanding of it, to be able to predict it and determine its probable consequence. So another objective is to coordinate, recommend, and advise about the event at the national level, and as a third objective is to coordinate at the international level the issues related with the national commission called ENFEN. So then our institution, what is the goal of our institution? Our institution has the goal to give or provide expert knowledge on the physics of El Niño and its prediction, particularly through the climate models, which are mainly tools used to the seasonal climate forecasting in the mean and the long term, between more than two months. So then our goal is to contribute in implementing models to help us to understand processes and predict the events. For example, we now are working in the regional atmosphere ocean model that is the developing is in progress. So thinking on, we have that objective, our institution promote or through the researchers implemented at a high performance computer facility to provide computational time for our studies, but also serve to build capacities on numerical models at the national level. So we give computational time to the researchers and the students that are attached to a no-profit institution. And also we give some lessons on numerical models, because in our universities at the undergraduate level, there are not numerical model courses. So we need to build that capacity in our country at least. And I probably is the same for the rest of South America. So then we took two paths. One is to implement facilities to build the capacity, but the other side, we need to get the information or data to know the processes, to monitoring the events, but also to fit the models. So then we, through the international community or the international collaboration, we implement different, we are on the way to implement different projects to try to collect information and provide to the global database.
Yvonne, 1 minute left.
Okay, I'm almost close. So then this is more or less the path that we are follow to implement projects that help us to provide us data and also to build capacity for a numerical model. So probably we can discuss more into the questions related to what is happening or what we contribute. But in the case of the international level, at least in my career, it helps us to keep going in the scientific path, because we have national issues to follow, but also we are, as a researcher, in the global context. So this is all what I wanted to share now.
Gracias, Yvonne. Bueno, podemos empezar con responder plantearles algunas preguntas del slide. Yo quisiera empezar con una pregunta para Emmanuel. La pregunta es, ¿tienes algunas sugerencias sobre cómo los investigadores de Sudamérica pueden participar en las actividades de Ocean Vision?
Thank you, Ken. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I'm going to repeat the question I think I understood. And the question is, how can South America, participate essentially in this ecosystem for ocean solutions? And my answer to that, I can share the experience that we've had in the United States to get this started. And what we've done first is we called a series of groups and institutions to come to the table and share what their current work is in the area of ocean solutions, what are their priorities, what is their vision. And by doing this sort of initial kind of going around the table and landscape with different institutions, we identified some priorities and shared goals. And then those are the shared sort of priorities that we brought forward in this sort of more organized, in our case, it's an Ocean Vision consortium, but in the case of South America, it could be a different type of consortium of institutions that are focused on ocean solutions. And then once we had these ideas, then this is what we brought to the UN together with other partners around the world, for other countries to sort of we'd like a program that can serve as an umbrella for all of us to sort of share information, share experience, but also bring to the table things that we care about the most. So to summarize my answer, I think it would be super important for colleagues and institutions around South America to maybe begin their own brainstorming to figure out exactly what are the shared visions and priority for the ocean solution space, and then use these umbrella like the GEOS for the United Nations to actually do the work and do this work maybe together with others, learning from others from other places. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so now getting to this point, because there is a question here for Salvatore, and they are asking how do, it's just moving here. If there is still opportunities to be part of the Ocean Decade programs, since Emmanuel is telling us that actually this is under the umbrella of the Ocean Decade program.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the Ocean Decade only, just started, if you like, and you can look at it as a social experiment, so to speak, because with a decade we are trying to have science, ocean science, get out of the sort of its comfort zone and enter and sort of walk the talk on these notions of co-design of the research agenda, co-development of knowledge, and co-delivery of solutions. So it's work in progress, and there has been one call already for projects, programs, support, and then there will be many more. And in fact, the second call for initiatives to populate the decade will take place in the next couple of months. So definitely, and my recommendation would be to look at the dedicated website for the decade, which I will now post in the chat, which is being revitalized, but where one can already now find some lessons in terms of how those initiatives, 20 plus, 25 plus initiatives that have been endorsed so far have been co-designed and are unfolding. But yes, definitely, we need further ideas and proposals. Thank you.
Gracias, Salvatore. Quisiera complementar también que la CPPS, la Comisión Permanente del Pacífico Sur, que tiene bajo su cargo el estudio regional del fenómeno del Niño, también está considerando hacer una propuesta para el Ocean Decade. Entonces eso, si es que ustedes son de los países que participan en la CPPS, pueden también intentar involucrarse a través de esa iniciativa.
Perfecto. Gracias, una información muy importante y soy a disposición para discutir.
Gracias. Bueno, acá una pregunta para Yvonne. La pregunta es, ¿te refieres a desarrollar modelos desde cero o utilizar modelos existentes y adaptarlos a las condiciones regionales y sus desafíos?
Gracias por la pregunta. Voy a responder en español, ya que Ken la hizo en español. En realidad estamos implementando modelos acoplados océano-atmósfera en base a dos modelos que ya existen, ¿no? Dos modelos de complejidad intermedia, uno del océano y otro de la atmósfera, y lo estamos implementando para la región del Pacífico tropical este, donde básicamente utilizamos las salidas de modelos globales o diferentes escenarios y estamos viendo el que tiene mejores resultados para el lado del Pacífico, ¿no? También estamos implementando o utilizando modelos, los modelos globales para analizar los sesgos que hay justamente en el Pacífico tropical este, que es un sistema de borde oriental, y que mientras que el modelo global te indica un desvío significativo regionalmente, estos son otros procesos los que probablemente les están faltando, dominando. Entonces lo que estamos haciendo es, en base a dos modelos que ya conocemos y hemos estudiado bien para la región, implementando un modelo acoplado para el sistema, ¿no? El objetivo es que en 2 o 3 años podamos tenerlo y mantenerlo, y que nos ayude a las predicciones de la tarea que tiene como parte de la Comisión ENFE, ¿no?
Thanks, Yvonne, for your answer. And so the next question then I'm going to ask it to Emmanuel. How do you elaborate, develop the whole roadmaps for these ocean visions then, and if you have any thoughts about it?
So the roadmap concept, it comes from what's called the design thinking theory, and the idea is to convene a multi-sector group of experts to focus on a grand challenge. One example that I can bring to the table is ocean carbon sequestration. We've just seen from the latest IPCC report a call for, not just mitigating carbon emission, but also, extracting some of the carbon from the atmosphere and potentially using the ocean as a way, using its power as a way to sequester. So what we did for the ocean carbon sequestration, we actually convened 3 different groups that explored technologies that go from macroalgae cultivation to ocean alkalinization and other ones. And they put together some sort of technological solution roadmaps to say, if we wanted to implement, for example, sequestration of carbon dioxide using, for example, the growth of macroalgae in the ocean, what would that take? What are the barriers? How do we get from A to Z, essentially? And what are the research gaps, the policy intervention, the priorities? And these maps were essentially built by bringing to the table experts from the different groups, including also the funders, including some government people. And at the end, we developed an initial draft of these roadmaps that are now being used to go and mobilize action. So if we need more research in this area, we need more advocacy in this other area, and so forth. And so this becomes sort of a shared kind of plan between a multi-sector group to sort of say, how do we go from just knowledge and ideas to actually implement action? I hope this makes sense and provides sort of with the flavor of what we mean by co-designing these roadmaps. And
Gracias.
Can I just make a comment, or because I guess it's a discussion.
Did you guys hear me, or was I on mute the whole time?
No, you just in a very, we heard it. You're just in a. We would have told you though. But Emmanuel, so the thing is that there is, for instance, an example of what you just said, right? That there are in communities that being done some projects of repopulating with microalgae to sequestration, but it has been done wrongly, because sometimes the research is not there for the locals, but also the local, but what I want to say is that the local knowledge is not taken in consideration. The locals actually knew that that species of algae wouldn't work there, but that wasn't taken in consideration, and was very heavy top down, this process. So do you have any strategy to involve the local community, not just the decision maker politicians, but
yes,
this local knowledge?
So the approach of GEOS, and also what we've been doing with these ocean vision roadmaps, has been very bottom up. So for example, at the end of these roadmaps, there were a series of pilot projects that were envisioned to sort of test some of these technology and so forth. These pilot projects were ultimately some groups came to the table to say, oh, we're going to, try to conduct these pilot projects. However, each of these pilot projects has an advisory board that is made of scientists and multi-sector scientists and engineers, as well as, engagement from local groups. Like we have an experiment going on in South Africa, and, Cape Town University and other groups in South Africa are involved in essentially conducting this experiment together, and also analyzing the environmental impacts, right? Because one of the big questions, as you know, for example, if you grow algae in the ocean to sequester carbon, what are the environmental impacts? And so the idea is that these pilots are conducted in conjunction with this sort of network of advisors, of scientists, of experts, of local communities that are engaged on purpose to sort of follow these pilots. And so hopefully avoiding exactly what you're talking, which is a top-down sort of approach that sort of is ignorant about all the circumstances that this is going on. I hope that makes sense. And hopefully within the decade, this bottom-up is going to be emphasized even more. Sorry, Salvatore, go ahead.
Oh, if I may, Regina and Ken.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. And Emmanuel, I had no intention to interrupt, but I got excited by your answer, because that's exactly what the decade is all about. And Ocean Solutions is definitely a key program trying to walk the talk on the many issues that are in front of us, one of which being exactly how do you capture the relevance and the contribution of indigenous and local knowledge. And one way to do this is to promote dialogues between ILK, indigenous and local knowledge, and conventional science. So it is not about validation by science or relevant knowledge. It's more a question of together trying to do things in a slightly different way. And I think Emmanuel's answer was very eloquent in that respect. Thank you.
Thanks. Ken?
Gracias. Sí, y sí, también quisiera comentar sobre ese tema. Bueno, primero que nada, recordarles a todos que aquí abajo en el Zoom tienen un botón para interpretación inglés-español. So for English-speaking people, we have an interpretation option down below in Zoom for Spanish or English. So that's a very useful tool we usually do not have. Bueno, mi comentario también muy en la línea de lo que acaban de comentar Emmanuelle y Salvatore, la importancia de este trabajo no top-down, idealmente bottom-up, pero preferiblemente interactuando entre, digamos, los científicos y los actores locales, muy parecido a lo que ha mencionado, fue ayer, creo que justamente Regina, sobre el My Climate Risk, esa interacción local, esa necesidad de trabajar un problema conjunto, creo que es muy parecido a lo que estaba comentando Emmanuelle, y también es el enfoque que tiene que implementar el RIFS, el Regional Information for Society. Entonces creo que lo que estamos discutiendo acá va muy en la línea de lo que intenta implementar el WCRP en los próximos años. Bueno, ese era mi comentario, y ahora quisiera... ¿Sí, Regina?
No, exactly. Okay, you go ahead and the next question then, I think.
Ok. Bueno, entonces una siguiente pregunta para Yvonne. Dice, hablas de modelos en plural. La pregunta es, ¿significa esto que estás pensando o quieres trabajar con ensambles de modelos y luego ver a la dispersión entre ellos?
Bueno, como lo comenté hace un momento, en realidad ahora utilizamos un modelo regional donde estamos utilizando diferentes condiciones de borde, porque es un modelo regional, necesita información en las fronteras, para evaluar el resultado de la simulación, ¿no? Y ver es el que mejora. Entonces, una de las opciones es justamente utilizar los diferentes modelos que se tienen a nivel global y alimentar este modelo acoplado para ver cómo esta deriva, cuáles son los resultados que se tienen y quizás hacer un ensamble. Pero eso, digamos, sería un paso adicional. Ahora mismo estamos ajustando toda la parte técnica y sacando el resultado inicial para ver de cómo el modelo se comporta del hoy hacia atrás, para luego ver del hoy hacia el futuro, ¿no?
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. The one question that I'm going to ask now is for all speakers. Do you have any thoughts on the role of that WCRP can play to facilitate some of these collaborations and cooperation? Emmanuel, do you want to start then?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think, it would be terrific to have a set of workshop or less and invite many colleagues and institutions around South America to share their work and their vision in the area of ocean solutions. Just so to get an idea of the landscape over South America, of who's doing what and what are the interests, and then use that to sort of develop a white paper to identify what is perhaps some shared visions that we may have, joint action, that there's a lot of traction per se in South America, and then bring this document, maybe to one of these UN programs like GEOS or others, and try to implement that action, leveraging also the international platforms and other international partners. I think, the sort of self-reflection, of what's going on right now and where we want to be together could be really useful. And at least it was useful that's the road we took in the United States when we first started.
Salvatore or Yvonne?
Yvonne, go ahead. I'll speak after you.
Gracias. Bueno, definitivamente hay que sentar a todos los actores. La comunidad científica en Sudamérica me atrevo a decir, es bastante pequeña, y dentro de esa comunidad es poco los que salimos a mostrar el trabajo que hacemos, porque este tipo de reuniones son pocas al final, ¿no? Yo creo que sería importante, como nos dijo Emmanuel, establecer reuniones para poder ver cuáles los avances que se tienen y los tipos de colaboraciones que se están teniendo, ¿no? O sea, tratamos de, yo diría a nivel nacional, hacemos nuestros esfuerzos para tratar de integrarnos como red, y a nivel Sudamérica al menos, es solamente los contactos a nivel de investigación, y a veces a nivel gubernamental estamos un poco desconectados, ¿no? Entonces hacer este tipo de reuniones en grupos quizás con diferentes grupos sería interesante, ¿no? Lo otro punto que creo que el WCRP puede seguir contribuyendo es justamente en la implementación de estos grupos que permiten tocar temáticas en específico, ¿no? Y quizás podría ser ampliado un poco más de repente a generar más capacidades, ¿no? Porque la expertise, por ejemplo, a nivel de Perú no nos formamos en modelado numérico, por ejemplo, en las universidades. No hay esa formación, hay un curso aislado. Tampoco hay oceanógrafos, por ejemplo, formados en universidades peruanas, en el caso de Perú. Entonces, estos comités internacionales lo que permiten es hacer escuelas de verano, cursos online para dar capacitaciones, pero todavía esas capacitaciones hay que, a nivel de máster o doctorado, ¿no? Entonces quizás habría que bajar el nivel a pregrado para que estos estudiantes puedan ir formándose, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que hacemos a nivel nacional? Nosotros damos cursos de nivel libre, tratando de darles esas herramientas que es a nivel de posgrado, pero esas herramientas no las tenemos. Entonces, abrir, por ejemplo, los programas internacionales que se tienen para que a nivel Sudamérica estudiantes puedan capacitarse en temas importantes, que sean multidisciplinarios, pero sin olvidar la ciencia básica, ¿no? Entonces necesitamos estudiar procesos básicos que desconocemos, y a veces queremos hacerlo muy multidisciplinario, pero nos escapamos de la base. Entonces sería importante implementar estos programas. Y bueno, para mí es fundamental el financiamiento. Nosotros como nivel de Sudamérica, el financiamiento es muy escaso o está muy focalizado. Entonces, la repatriación de estudiantes, por ejemplo, los estudiantes que se han formado en Estados Unidos, en Europa, en otros lugares del mundo, y luego regresarlos a nuestros países, es un poco difícil porque dependemos de los fondos y son, no sé, 500 postulandos para una sola fuente. Entonces yo diría, si se puede viabilizar fondos que permita que estudiantes regresen o que se toquen temáticas que nos contribuyan a nivel nacional, eso sería importante, pienso. Voy a dejar la palabra a Salvatore.
Gracias, Ivonne. Personally, I thought when I sort of realized that WCRP was developing these regional fora, I thought that was exactly the way to go for several reasons. First of all, you have issues which are specific to a given region. Of course, South America is a highly diversified regions, but you have issues related to language, but also, the way science is conducted and the networks are in place. And my suggestion would be to pretty much, institutionalize, formalize this forum that is taking place right now and yesterday, so that it can act as a bridge between WCRP on the one hand, which is and should continue being the custodian of fundamental kind of questions related to climate variability and climate change. And I mean, someone has to continue addressing those fundamental questions. And also an important role that WCRP has played and will continue playing is to have, different national research agendas sort of converge towards common let's say, questions and objectives. But then WCRP can and should also benefit from, these experiments that are taking place outside of conventional science, one of which being the decade as far as the ocean component of the climate system. So, and one way to do this is to basically formalize the forum and without, institutionalizing it overly, to have these discussions take place on a more regular basis and see how then lessons from the regions can cross-fertilize with discussions in other regions, knowing that there are also common issues. For example, Yvonne is one of the world experts in IBAS, Eastern Boundary Upwelling Systems, and an important question for climate scientists these days is whether or not and how IBAS are being affected by climate change and what kind of societal impacts that is having in terms of food security, for example. So, that my intervention was not to say that then one should stay at the level of region X or Y, but I think it's very, very important to maintain these the regional dimensions of dimension of the discussion, and this forum, I think, is demonstrating that very clearly. Thank you.
Just to add in then, my perspective from inside the WCRP is that the Lighthouse activities has, I think, a little bit of this idea of making these labs, this interaction with society more strongly, and they have the time frame of 10 years at least for now, but the idea is that they will become self-sustained in the future. So it's actually basically to host all these activities, the forums and everything that and that they become. I think that's the idea of this. A lot of the new structure of WCRP that is being implemented now. So we should use this, particularly with the ocean decade. In my climate risk, we are gonna try to do an ocean lab and get it ocean hubs, and we can work together, I think, for the same goals actually. So Ken, do you want to read the next question? Or?
Gracias, Regina. Bueno, sí, entonces la siguiente pregunta, que también sería para todos nuestros oradores, es sobre financiamiento. Si una institución quisiera estar involucrada en algunos de los programas oceánicos, ¿qué se puede hacer para atraer financiamiento para estos nuevos socios?
And I understand that the question was directed to me.
Cualquiera de los tres, o los tres.
Okay. Well, perhaps I can just share my 2 cents. That is that there seems to be an interesting emerging model whereby foundations, for example, partner with the research institutions to launch programs that are going to sort of then serve a larger constituency than the science, the constituency of scientists. So there are new models for funding research, which are emerging, and in fact that is another important finding of the Global Ocean Science Report. So yeah, those are my 2 cents. Some of those models are being tested, and but some interesting lessons are emerging already in the context of the decade. I don't know if I was able to share the website of the decade as yet, but I would like to invite participants to look at some of that new kind of approach, whereby you see new players, the private sector, for example, work increasingly hand in hand with ocean scientists. And I think we should be exploring those new funding models more actively.
Gracias. Emmanuelle?
I'm just going to build upon what Salvatore said and mention that right now, if we think about ocean solutions and innovation, there's the investment capital that exists in that area is order of magnitudes larger than any government funding or other foundational funding for research. So we need to identify and find how to make the research to solution bridge really relevant for this investment capital. I also may say that there is, as I understand it from my latest experience in this field, a lot of this investment capital is idle because investing in ocean solutions and innovations is a risky business. And so that's a place where the scientific and engineering leaderships of research universities and colleagues like are present today can have a huge say in really corroborating and consolidating the depth and the strength of some of these solution innovations engines that we're trying to produce, if that makes sense. And so in other words, to summarize and going back to Salvatore, we have to find a way to mobilize the investment capital in translating research into solutions that essentially create an ocean solution economy of sorts, if that makes sense.
And I would like to add that this is a lot of a difference, like I say, the access to this capital in US, for instance, and in a country like any country in South America. So that has to be worked too, because it's much more difficult in South America to have this. I can judge by Brazil, where I live. It's very little investment from the private sector in research. Anyways, if it's risky, even worse. So we don't have that kind of capability. So this would be an interesting aspect to take in consideration and to be more inclusive in this new way of doing science too.
Yeah, I definitely hear that, and I totally understand that. And all I can say is that the investment world is becoming more international, especially if we're looking at these global scale innovations. And so this is a discussion and a brainstorming that needs to happen. We need to engineer sitting at the table how we can make that happen. So it requires definitely some more convening and brain power and really, tackling this specific aspect as the solution. How do we actually mobilize this international capital? Because I don't know the landscape in South America, but South America is environmentally a very rich and diverse country, and I am sure that if we leverage some of these international platforms, we can find ways to. I wouldn't want to use the term commercialize, but bring that commercial capital to really empower the solutions that can come out of the South America as a coastal environment and so forth. I mean, yes, it's complicated. I'm not saying that it's an easy task.
Gracias. Bueno, antes de pasar con Salvatore, quizás le damos un momento a Ivonne para que pueda comentar también. Si que tienes algo que quieras compartir, Ivonne, tema de financiamiento.
En realidad nosotros estamos en búsqueda de financiamiento, ¿no? Y los consorcios es un elemento, colaborar con proyectos internacionales es una opción, aunque básicamente sirve para generar capacidades o, por ejemplo, la implementación de instrumentos, o, por ejemplo, el tema de la implementación del supercomputador de alto rendimiento inició con un proyecto internacional que luego fue financiado por fondos nacionales. Entonces, las redes en realidad internacionales que tenemos son los que nos permiten tener algún tipo de financiamiento a través de básicamente la compra de material, sea para parte computacional, como instrumentos de medición oceanográfica o la capacitación de estudiantes que pueden ser parte de doctorados, de maestrías, ¿no? Eso es nuestro fondo o esa es la estrategia que hemos utilizado. Ahora, respecto a lo que comentaba un poco Salvatore y un poco Emmanuel, es interesante la solución de tratar de traer más economía para la investigación, pero para eso hay que hacer entender que a nivel Sudamérica el océano no es, científicamente es importante porque gatilla muchos procesos que se sienten en tierra, pero a la escala de la toma de decisiones, que va desde la necesidad de una persona común y silvestre hasta el que toma decisiones para priorizar presupuestos, el océano no es prioridad. Y por lo tanto, al menos es lo que yo siento a nivel Sudamérica, siempre estamos tratando de solicitar fondos, pero claro, no estamos en la prioridad. Como que primero hay que hacer que las personas de todos los niveles entiendan cuál es el rol que el océano juega para sustentar nuestros recursos naturales, para mantener nuestra economía. Y eso es lo que necesitamos tratar de hacer. Quizás en el hemisferio norte eso ya está establecido, pero yo siento que en el hemisferio sur todavía necesitamos darle mayor peso, tratar de hacer entender que el océano es importante, ¿no? Y no sé exactamente cómo lo vamos a lograr, y eso implica muchos años de formación, ¿no? Desde el nivel desde los niños hasta los niveles superiores. Hay varios ejes que hay que tratar, entonces, ¿cómo lo planteamos? Bueno, estamos aquí juntos para pensarlo, ¿no?
Gracias, Ivonne. Salvatore?
Yeah, no, very, very quickly. I'm no anthropologist or social scientist, but WCRP is opening up to social sciences as well. As a matter of fact, now the steering committee, scientific steering committee of WCRP now also includes social sciences. And if you think about the way people tend to refer to science, I've always found very interesting that people say scientists, but we scientists by education or by practice as well know that actually the scientific community is so diversified, is made of so many epistemological communities. Sometimes you have, hydrologists who focus on, freshwater systems tend to think differently from hydrologists who work with marine systems, so the atmosphere. So it's exactly like Emmanuelle was saying. It's about before jumping onto the solution, it's about making connections. It's about having those different communities try and understand each other. And I think, okay, this is probably not the main mission of WCRP, but I think WCRP can help. And at the end of the day, there is no reason why the private sector should not be able to, come to a common ground with scientists in understanding and recognizing the importance of the ocean as a whole, and also for the climate system. So it's a new area we are entering, perhaps also thanks to the decade, and that we must enter to make progress. And so I think the forum is also an opportunity for WCRP to think about where WCRP wants to go in different regions, but also as a whole. And if indeed it intends to and can help in that respect as well, in really promoting dialogues between different constituencies that have different aspirations, different expectations, different value systems, different behaviors, but at the end of the day, those have to converge.
Thank you, Salvatore. I think we don't have any more time. Is that correct, Ken?
I think we're just in time to finish.
Okay.
Yes, that's right, Ken and Regina. We have reached the end of that session, so I will take over the video and microphone. But before we move to the next session, two things. Firstly, I really want to thank, firstly, Regina and Ken. It is very hard to do a discussion virtually. You managed it brilliantly well, and that was also helped because of our three fantastic speakers, Yvonne, Emmanuel, and Salvatore. So thank you all so very much for helping us actually have a conversation and a discussion that was engaging and stimulating. And thanks to Boris, who organized the content of it. It was really good. As I said, they're hard to do, and I'm delighted to see that we were able to achieve it. And also the effort that you've all gone to make this as accessible as possible. And thanks to our translators, who I feel like must be working very hard at the moment, but it's just been great. Okay.